Okay, so today I am going to be talking about an enormously important topic, and it's actually one of my favorite topics to be talking about. It is leaky gut. So many of you who are already following me likely have heard of leaky gut. To anyone who wants a better explanation, wants to learn more, or anybody who's new to this, I'm so excited to talk about it. So leaky gut is really something that is a modern day disease, as many diseases are. And it is a direct result because of our modern lifestyle. And it is literally affecting almost all of us. I mean, today with children being born by C-section, people on all kinds of different medications from antibiotics to acid blockers. I'll get all into this shortly about the causes of leaky gut, to the stressful world we live in, toxins, the food we're eating. I'm going to go over all the reasons that many of us are dealing with leaky gut. Now, if any of you all have an autoimmune condition, you most likely are definitely dealing with a leaky gut. The research out there is really showing that you need to have a leaky gut in order to have an autoimmune disease. And there's even new research linking leaky gut to even cancer and things like allergies and eczema and asthma. So think of the myriad number of people out there, the sheer millions upon millions with all of these conditions. And likely it all leads back to one particular, I'll call it a disease, but one particular imbalance or one particular thing going wrong in your body, which is leaky gut. So as I've already mentioned, leaky gut can really set you up on a path to chronic illness. So today I'm going to be talking about why leaky gut matters, what it is, what causes it, and most importantly, what all of you probably want to know is what to do about it. And what to do about it is actually super simple. And because our gut cells turn over so quickly, it's actually relatively easy to repair if you follow the steps that I'm going to tell you about today. So leaky gut really matters because I often say the gut is the gateway to health. Nearly 60 to 80% of our immune system is sitting in our gut. So if you have an autoimmune condition with 60 to 80% of your immune system sitting in your gut, you can see how important knowing that you have leaky gut is and dealing with leaky gut. Now, I do want to say one thing. Many people who have leaky gut have actually no digestive symptoms whatsoever. So let me just say that again. The vast majority of the people that I see with leaky gut don't actually even have any digestive symptoms. So we'll go over that in a minute as well. Now, the gut is also considered the gateway to health because nearly 95% of your serotonin, which is our feel-good neurotransmitter hormone, is made in our gut. Often it's referred to as the gut as the second brain. So you can see how important the gut is to our health. So let's talk about specifically what is leaky gut. So, and what I'd like to say to people out there who don't really believe that this is an issue now is that, one, if you just go into the medical research and into the literature, you will see hundreds upon hundreds of research articles all about leaky gut. It is a real thing. So, and what I'd like to say is that right now, there are drug companies that are racing to create something called a zonulin blocker. So when we have a leaky gut, our gut releases zonulin. And they've realized that when the zonulin gets released, the gut stays open longer. And I'll get into this as well. But there are drug companies racing to be the first to find a zonulin blocker. And then somebody will patent that and they'll be able to make gazillions of dollars. And let me tell you what, next time you walk into your GI doctor's office, once they have this drug, they will all be talking to you about leaky gut. So for all those naysayers out there, all those people that don't really believe this is an issue, it really is. In fact, the research shows that it takes about 18 years on average for research to happen, then it to find its way into medical school and find its way into teaching new doctors and then into clinical practice. So we're not even at the 18-year mark right now on all the research surrounding leaky gut. So one could say this is rather cutting edge information. Okay, so I like to think of the gut like a drawbridge. So our gut sits together with these tight junctions like this, and we digest and absorb through our teeny tiny villi. Now, our gut is normally semi-permeable, meaning that these tight junctions naturally open up a teeny tiny bit. It's really legitimately how we digest and absorb our food. Naturally, it's what's supposed to happen. Now, however, when these tight junctions break apart, because something comes and it causes it to release zonulin, and these tight junctions break apart, then the gut sits apart and larger particles that were never meant to get there do. So if you think about it like a drawbridge, the teeny tiny particles that macronutrients and micronutrients that we're supposed to absorb naturally can get through that drawbridge. But in order to have one of the bigger boats get through, something needs to signal the drawbridge to open. So when the drawbridge signals to open, then these large boats that were never meant to get in to our bloodstream do. So our gut cell layer, or gut thickness, is only one cell layer thick. And right below that one cell is our immune system. And then right below that basically leads into our bloodstream. So if you can imagine, that the tight junctions are there, they only let teeny tiny particles in, but when they break open and then these large particles can come through, one, we'll talk about this, your immune system sees it and stimulates and goes, uh-oh, not supposed to be here. And then if it still is able to pass, then it gets literally into your bloodstream. So what are some of the lifestyle factors? So when I talk about autoimmunity, I talk about that autoimmunity can be reversed. And that twin studies show that your chance of getting autoimmunity is really only about 25% genetic, and 75% is the environment. So this is one of the main factors, environmental factors, that I talk about, or when I'm working with people to reverse autoimmunity, where we look first is the gut. So this is an enormous area where we can have a lot of say-so. And the good news is we can make some changes. So let's talk about things that cause that bridge or those tight junctions to open up. And those are things like inflammatory foods, gluten and dairy. Very specifically, we know that gluten can stimulate zonulin to be released. And in fact, Alessio Fasano, who's the researcher out of Harvard, who's done most of the work surrounding leaky gut, and he actually is the person who found zonulin and named it zonulin. He discovered zonulin, and he said that leaky gut occurs in absolutely everybody when they eat gluten. However, again, because those gut cells can turn over very quickly and can signal the zonulin to turn off, people who are healthy and don't have a gluten sensitivity will recover from that. However, if you're somebody who has a gluten sensitivity, certainly if you have celiac or autoimmunity, you may not recover from that. And the zonulin, or the gluten, sits there and continues to stimulate the zonulin and keeps those tight junctions open, or that drawbridge open. Now, we know also because of molecular mimicry, and that dairy, particularly casein, looks so similar to gluten that dairy has a chance of doing the same thing because of something called molecular mimicry, meaning it's like a case of mistaken identity. The dairy molecule looks so similar to the gluten molecule. So we also know that there are other inflammatory foods that potentially could lead to leaky gut as well. And that's corn and soy. And that's because, nearly 90% of the corn and soy on the market is GMO, or genetically modified corn and soy. And we're really beginning to find out what Roundup is doing to the gut microbiome, to the tight junctions, and things like that. So other foods as well, like grains and legumes, they were never really meant to be eaten by humans in a certain kind of way. So back in the day, we were hunter-gatherers, and we didn't have an agricultural society yet. And so it was animals that were eating these berries and things off of trees and things with seeds. And the idea was that they ate it, and then they would walk away and poop, and then it would allow the life cycle of that plant to continue to live. So naturally, grains and legumes and nuts and seeds have an outer layer that are made of things called lectins that aren't supposed to be broken down by our gut. And this outer layer is like its protective shell that prevents it literally from getting broken down in the gut. And so these lectins can be very irritating to some people in the gut. Now, there are some things, and I discussed this in my book, The Autoimmune Solution, and the Thyroid Connection, that you can do if you are somebody who's going to eat these foods, grains and legumes and nuts and seeds, to soak them, cook them for very long times. And this can, in some ways, get rid of these lectins or reduce the amount of lectin burden. Now, other foods that contribute to leaky gut: sugar in and of itself. It also obviously can feed infections that we'll get to in a minute, like small intestinal bacterial overgrowth, candida. Alcohol in and of itself can cause a leaky gut. Alcohol is a toxin to our body. GMOs, I've already discussed them. And so you really want to get out these toxic and inflammatory foods that I'm talking about. And I'll get into that as I talk about how to heal your gut. The first step is going to be to remove some of these foods that I'm talking to you about today. Other infections, and I see this day in and day out in my clinic. In fact, I'm working on a very large presentation right now with lots of case studies. And in every one of them, the person has autoimmunity, and they all have candida and SIBO. So both of these infections are known to cause leaky gut. And candida kind of lays a layer over your gut that suppresses your ability to make your serotonin. That's why candida can have brain fog and depression associated with it. SIBO, there's some studies coming out right now with those with Hashimoto's, even hypothyroidism and Hashimoto's, that over 50% of those people have SIBO. So I see this all the time in my clinic, that these infections, and parasites as well. Now, there's some new research coming out about parasites, that some parasites can be there and be beneficial. In fact, some treatment for autoimmunity can include giving people parasites. However, most parasites are considered pathogenic and can lead to leaky gut as well. We know that there's a whole number of toxins like mercury, like bisphenol A. There's a whole host in the fluorides, chlorides, halides that can overburden your body and cause leaky gut. And then there's a whole host of medications. And I have an article about this on my website if you're interested about what medications can cause leaky gut. Antibiotics, of course, can, because it disrupts your microbiome. Anti-inflammatories like Motrin, there's studies coming out now about Motrin actually affecting your microbiome as well. In addition, Motrin affects the prostaglandins, or the things that secrete mucus in your gut and block that in your gut. And so that can lead to leaky gut. If you're on acid-reducing medications, you need acid in your gut in order to kill off infections like SIBO or candida, and you need it to absorb or digest and absorb foods, break down foods like your proteins into amino acids, some of which are essential and you can only get them from your diet, to help you absorb B vitamins, iron, things like that. Steroids, of course, can cause leaky gut as well. And then stress, there's some studies coming out now showing that stress in and of itself can cause leaky gut, and aging as well. There's studies showing marathon runners and endurance athletes, looking at the beginning of a race and looking at their immune system after the end of the race, and looking at their gut and intestinal permeability, and showing that things like that stress can really affect your gut. It also can affect your microbiome. Stress can affect your microbiome as well. So when you have a leaky gut, as I've already mentioned, these larger boats that were never meant to get into your bloodstream do. So that's where food particles like gluten or dairy or casein can then get into your bloodstream. Viruses and bacteria, or parts of viruses and bacteria, even toxins, like I've already mentioned, mercury, can get into your bloodstream. And then through that process that I've already mentioned to you previously called molecular mimicry, as these food particles, toxins, viruses, bacteria get into your bloodstream, as I mentioned, your gut is only one cell layer thick. We've already mentioned 60 to 80% of your immune system is sitting in your gut right there. So as these things come across through the drawbridge, and then your immune system sitting there, and it says, uh-oh, that big particle, that Epstein-Barr particle, that mercury particle, that gluten particle is not supposed to be here. I'm going to go attack it. And so your immune system goes to attack this virus, excuse me, this food particle, this toxin. And as it does that, your immune system goes on high alert, coming in to attack But what can happen, we know that, say, for the gluten molecule, looks very similar to our thyroid tissue. And instead of fighting the gluten molecule, it can inadvertently attack our thyroid tissue. And this is one of the main theories surrounding molecular mimicry and autoimmunity, where you have this leaky gut, one of these toxins, viruses, or food particles comes in, the immune system goes to attack it. As it attacks it, and it's attacking it from all angles, your thyroid or other body tissues look very similar to these food particles and viruses, and the immune system gets confused, a case of mistaken identity, and goes to attack that body part, whether it be your virus, to your joints with rheumatoid arthritis, to your brain with MS, so to your skin with psoriasis, eczema, things like that. And so really, we're going to get into this. The first step in getting rid or reversing any of these conditions is to heal the gut. And I'm going to show you exactly how to do that very shortly. So for those of you who all are wondering, what are some symptoms of leaky gut? Well, as I mentioned, there are a lot of people who do not have any digestive symptoms at all. However, if you are experiencing things like gas, bloating, diarrhea, you've been diagnosed with IBD, you've been diagnosed with IBS, likely you have a leaky gut. Certainly you got something going on in there, whether it's an imbalance with an infection that could eventually lead to leaky gut, or you have food intolerances that again can be a result of leaky gut, or could over time, as you continue to eat these inflammatory foods for yourself, create leaky gut. So food intolerances and food allergies is another big sign or symptom to me that there's something going on in the gut, likely an infection or even leaky gut. Brain fog, difficulty concentrating, ADD, ADHD can be signs or symptoms of leaky gut. Chronic headaches, mood swings, issues such as anxiety, depression. We already talked about that candida in the gut and how that can suppress your ability to make serotonin. Candida can be one of the biggest causes of leaky gut. Skin issues, rosacea, eczema, acne, psoriasis, frankly, any autoimmune condition can be a sign or symptom of having a leaky gut. Seasonal allergies and asthma, chronic fatigue, fibromyalgia, hormonal imbalances, infertility, PMS, PCOS. And like I've already mentioned, if you have a diagnosis of an autoimmune condition, the likelihood is that you do have a leaky gut based on the research of Alessio Fasano. He actually was on the cover, his idea was on the cover of Scientific American nearly 10 years ago now, talking about this legged stool for autoimmunity. And that is a genetic predisposition, a leaky gut, and then environmental factors that sort of tip you over the edge. So as I've mentioned, you might be just saying, oh, I get some seasonal allergies. Oh, I have some food sensitivities. Oh, I have a little asthma. What is this person talking about? Who really cares if I have a leaky gut or not? Their research is really showing if you have a leaky gut, it is leaving you exposed for far worse conditions like autoimmunity, which I have the most experience with. And there's research coming out now with even cancer and leaky gut. So we've talked about this, how the gut already, as these foods are coming in, it's creating inflammation with the immune system, going on high alert. And of course, a little bit of inflammation can over time lead to chronic inflammation, which can eventually lead to autoimmunity. So I talk about that in my book, The Autoimmune Solution, and I recap it in the Autoimmune Solution Cookbook, all about the autoimmune spectrum. No inflammation all the way to autoimmunity. And as you continue with this chronic inflammation leading to autoimmunity, how do we get this chronic inflammation? It's that leaky gut sitting there with all these foods, toxins, infections coming through, creating an inflammatory response chronically can lead to autoimmunity. And then I've already discussed how through the molecular mimicry, which is that case of mistaken identity, that our immune system can go on high alert, go to attack these molecules and inadvertently attack our own tissues, because many of our own tissues look like many of these same molecules. So the good news is repairing your gut is actually really pretty easy. So your gut cells, well, we know that our microbiome changes within 24 to 48 hours. So, starting, which we're going to talk about here in a minute, with diet is super important, because these gut cells, if you're somebody who's eating a trashy, full on, sad, what we call a standard American diet full of packaged food, and you switch over to a healthy diet full of fruits and vegetables and real whole foods, within 48 hours, you can see a shift in your microbiome. So that in and of itself is super cool. And then the gut cells are also turning over every 48 to 72 hours. So you're getting a change in the gut microbiome, and then even a turnover in these gut cells. So, if you think about it, when people do chemotherapy, what does it affect first? Your most rapidly turning over cells. So people who are doing chemotherapy often have nausea, vomiting, lots of gut issues. And those gut cells, because it's affecting those cells more, because they are turning over more quickly. But the good news about that is that these cells turn over quickly. And there are even some things that you can do that I'll talk to you about in just a second that will help support them in turning over more quickly and in a healthier fashion. So we'll talk about that in just a second. But the great news is that even if you're dealing with one of these chronic health conditions, the first step in helping to reverse them is dealing with a leaky gut. And the fantastic news is that healing a leaky gut can be rather simple, and for some people happen very quickly. So let's get into exactly how you heal a leaky gut. So the first step in healing a leaky gut is to remove the bad. So what is the bad? It's all those foods I was talking to you about in the beginning. The gluten, the dairy, those are the two biggest culprits that I ever see with leaky gut. In fact, I write in all of my books that if you have a history of autoimmunity, to never add gluten or dairy back into your diet, because of the research talking about that molecular mimicry and the research talking about gluten, particularly in creating a leaky gut in absolutely everybody. So, so I recommend that you keep these out of your diet indefinitely. And then I want you to take out foods like, well, I want you to indefinitely remove GMOs, but certainly corn and soy, and GMOs, corn and soy. Other foods that can be inflammatory are nightshades and eggs. And we mentioned the grains and legumes and the nuts and seeds. Now, you don't have to remove these forever, but I recommend at least removing them for 30 days or until your symptoms have reversed for you. And then if you're on any immunosuppressive medications, that you're able to get off of those as well. And then you can add them back in sparingly and just see how you do. You want to get rid of the toxic foods as well. So the sugars, the alcohol, the caffeine, the preservatives, the dyes, all the junk and packaged foods. Again, there might be a place every once in a while for some caffeine if you can tolerate it, a little sugar here or there if, on your birthday, gluten-free, dairy-free cupcake or something of the sort, but not for 30 days at least, or until your symptoms resolved and you are feeling better. Now, of course, I talk all about this again in the Autoimmune Solution Cookbook. So this is a standalone book. If you don't have already the Autoimmune Solution or the Thyroid Connection, you can pick up a copy of the Autoimmune Solution Cookbook. And the first chapter, I recap all about my program to heal a leaky gut and exactly what to do. It also includes 150 brand new recipes. There are a few, maybe 5, 10 repeat fan favorites, but otherwise these are all new recipes. So if you own the Thyroid Connection or the Autoimmune Solution and you're looking for some new recipes, take a look at this. And we have some incredible recipes using some grain-free, gluten-free flours that were not available when I wrote the Autoimmune Solution and the Thyroid Connection. So if you head over to amymd.io/AI cookbook and order a copy of the Autoimmune Solution Cookbook, you can right now, between now and May 8th, get $150 in free bonus gifts. And if you order by the end of March, I'm also going to give you a $20 gift card to spend in my store. So you're getting the book practically free. And I'm going to tell you right here in just a second some fabulous things to help heal your gut, so you have plenty of things to use your $20 gift card on. So as I mentioned, some of the biggest reasons that I see for leaky gut are infections. So we're removing the bad. So the bad is the foods those inflammatory and toxic foods, and the bad is infections. So we're removing toxic and inflammatory foods, and we're removing infections. So if you're curious, do you have candida? Do you have SIBO? Do you have parasites? You can also head over to my website, and I have a quiz on my website. I believe it's at amymd.io/quiz, and you can check out a quiz to see if you have any of these infections, and that's totally free. So I have articles on my website as well, all about candida signs and symptoms, parasite signs and symptoms, SIBO signs and symptoms, and exactly what to do about those infections. So you want to get rid of the bad inflammatory and toxic foods, and you want to get rid of the infections. And I have plenty of free resources to tell you exactly how to do both of those things. Then what I want you to do is to replace the good. So we need ingredients so we have optimal digestion. Do we have enough digestive enzymes? A lot of people don't have enough digestive enzymes, so they're not breaking down their food properly, so they're not able to absorb it. You know, it's really not you are what you eat, it's what you digest and absorb. I even have seen people coming into my clinic eating amazingly good diets because they've already read my books. But then we do some nutrient testing on them and they are not absorbing their food well. Or we do a stool test on them and their digestive enzymes are in the toilet. So you can always just take a complete digestive enzyme and give it a trial. Try it out. If you start taking these and you're noticing your gas, your indigestion, your bloating are going away, then likely you need digestive enzymes. Another thing is stomach acid. So many people out there are on these acid blocking medications, which I have already said can lead to leaky gut. We need our stomach acid in order to ward off the candida, ward off the SIBO, digest our amino acids, digest our B vitamins, our iron. So if you have low stomach acid, or maybe if you have acid reflux, for a lot of people, they actually have low stomach acid and they can replace with just a little HCl. And I have information about how to do that as well. In fact, if you're somebody who suffers from GERD or acid reflux, my team will put a post of an article about, do you actually really have high acid, like most people think with acid reflux, or do you actually have low acid, and exactly how to figure that out and how to do a trial of HCl. Now, the third thing that we're going to do when we are trying to heal our gut is to re-inoculate with good bacteria. So, you know, the future of medicine, I believe, is really going towards our gut microbiome. We are realizing so much about the gut microbiome. First of all, there are more bugs in us and on us than there are of our very own cells. It's these bugs that are really ruling the roost. We're kind of the puppet, and the bugs in there are telling us what to do. There have been some studies in mice where they have taken, bacteria from fat rats and put it in skinny rats, and the skinny rats got fat. And then the skinny mice, they took their bacteria and put them in the fat rats, and then they got skinny. Same thing with anxiety and depression. So these microbes are really ruling the roost here. So it's very important that you know that your gut is in balance. I like to think of our gut microbiome like a rainforest. Everything's in there in balance. We have good bacteria. We might even have some bad bacteria. We might even have parasites. And we all have a little bit of yeast. That's meant to be there to help us digest and absorb. But when this rainforest gets out of balance because we were born by C-section, we had to take antibiotics, we're on an acid blocking medication, we chronically take anti-inflammatories like Motrin, we eat a high inflammatory diet, or we're eating foods that are filled with sugars and carbs, then this rainforest can get out of balance. And when it gets out of balance, then the bad guys overgrow, like the yeast, like the parasites, or like small bowel intestinal bacterial overgrowth, which is actually too much of a good bacteria that's in the wrong place. And I have lots of information about this on my website and all of my books, all about SIBO, candida, and the gut. So while you're trying to heal your gut, I recommend a probiotic that is 100 billion units. So 100 billion units are, and you want them in CFUs, meaning colony-forming units, that they are alive and living. Ours do not need to be refrigerated because of some patented technology to keep them in a nitrogen pack so they are still living. Also, when you're looking at a probiotic, you want to look at the fact that your probiotic is guaranteed until the time of expiration, not the day that it was made, but the time that it expires, because you don't know if it's only when it was manufactured, guaranteed, what it is by the time you take it, okay? And then once you've healed your gut, then I recommend 30 billion units for a maintenance dose. But while you're trying to overcome this imbalance in your gut, you want to be on some super high probiotics. Now, if you do have SIBO, I do actually recommend a different probiotic, and I have one on my website called Primal Earth. It's a soil-based organism. Now, again, too much to get into here. However, lots of articles on SIBO, so you can head to my website and I talk all about this, amymyersmd.com, or you can just put in amymyersmd.com SIBO and into Google, and I will have lots of articles that come up surrounding this. Now, SIBO is too much of a good thing, which is lactobacillus in your small intestine. So you don't want to be adding more fuel to the fire. So in that case, I recommend the Primal Earth probiotic, which is a soil-based organism, until you've overcome that, and then you can switch over to the 100 billion or the 30 billion. Okay, now the last part in healing your gut is probably one of the most important parts. So we've removed the foods, we've removed the infections, we're replacing the good, the digestive enzymes, the HCl if you need it, we're re-inoculating with good bacteria like we've already mentioned, and now we're going to be repairing the lining of your gut. So that is super important. Remember, I already told you those gut cells turn over very quickly, but there's some things that you can do to help them turn over and support them in doing that more quickly and efficiently and effectively. So my absolute favorite go-to for restoring your gut lining is collagen powder. So collagen actually helps to seal up the leaks. And I literally drink this twice a day. The collagen that we have here is completely tasteless, and it dissolves in hot or cold water. And so you can literally put it into anything. So our small intestines, or the little villi, remember how I told you our tight junctions sit together and they're villi where we digest and absorb? Well, these villi are made of collagen. And again, I have articles all about collagen as well. As we age, our collagens decrease. In fact, after 40, if you're over 40, which most of us with autoimmunity are, if you're over 40, how quickly our collagen is declining, our body cannot restore it at the same rate. So you really need to replete with collagen. And, you know, you're hearing the rage about the collagen now, right? So back in the day, our ancestors ate a diet that was much more filled with collagen because they ate the animal, the entire animal. Whereas now we, don't eat any tendons. We don't eat any bones. And why bone broth has become such a rage. So you, of course, can get collagen from bone broth, which is awesome. And if you have time and energy to make bone broth, by all means, definitely do that. Another easier way to get it is in the form of collagen powder. So it's all the benefits of a bone broth, but without all the hassle. So, like I mentioned, I drink this twice a day, every day, usually when I get up, just in some water with some lemon. So I recommend waking up, drinking like 2 glasses of water with some lemon to help flush out your body of all the toxins from overnight. You can just add in a scoop of collagen. In the evening, I usually drink it with hot tea before I go to bed. So it's really helpful because it keeps your blood sugar nice and level. If you're anybody dealing with diabetes, it can be really great to sort of get you through the night without being hungry. And then my second favorite go-to for helping to heal your gut is an amino acid called L-Glutamine. Now, L-Glutamine helps those gut cells to turn over or rejuvenate much more quickly. This is also fabulous because it can help with building muscle as well as sugar cravings, and so can collagen. So they both they're doing 2 different things, and they're helping to support your gut health and support healing your gut in very different ways. So they work very well hand in hand. So I've seen amazing results from people, of course, in my clinic following this 4-hour approach to healing your gut. And I get letters and emails and Facebook messages from people every day from literally around the world who've done my programs, reading my books, or just reading articles on my website, and who have found success and helped reverse their chronic autoimmune conditions using this 4-hour approach to healing their gut. So don't forget, I, of course, walk you through this in all of my books, The Autoimmune Solution, The Thyroid Connection, and I have a recap of all of that in the Autoimmune Solution Cookbook. And I have several online programs that also help you out. I have a leaky gut program, soon to be a SIBO program, so be on the lookout for that. We have a Candida program and the autoimmune solution program as well.